Hi everybody and welcome to Different Leaf. I'm Brit Smith, soaking up the final days of the summer sun and bracing for the cold New England winter months ahead. Please feel free to send me some socks. When I say cold, I mean really cold. Over the past 15 years, I've actually traveled and moved a lot around the US, and from the deep south to the west coast to the northeast, the climate has been drastically different in every single place. Apart from constantly having to reconfigure my wardrobe, moving a lot has also opened my eyes to just how much that local climate impacts what you can get your hands on when it comes to local crops. You'll get the freshest guacamole in Southern California and the juiciest oranges in Florida, and if you're looking for some top-notch sun-grown marijuana, you should definitely go to the Pacific Northwest. There's an area you might have heard of in Northern California and Southern Oregon known as the Emerald Triangle. It's got fertile hillsides and lush rainfall, and for generations, it's been where thousands of cannabis cultivators have grown some of the world's best weed. Sadly, over recent years, we've seen that same region suffer devastating wildfire seasons, which appear to only be getting worse. This summer, so far, the West Coast has had a record-breaking 3.7 million acres of wildfires, and many of them are still burning. One of the largest wildfires of the season, the August Complex Fire, is still slowly creeping towards the Emerald Triangle. The Glass Fire in Northern California, which was 0% contained at the start of October, has already scorched dozens of growers' fields in Sonoma and Napa counties, and most of them don't have crop insurance. If they're lucky enough not to be burned, the ash and the smoke is still damaging thousands of plants that were almost ready to be harvested. Meanwhile, the rest of the US is also trying to figure out if outdoor marijuana farming is really the best long-term plan for this industry. In Colorado, a weird 70-degree temperature drop in mid-September led to several inches of snow being dumped on some major outdoor grows. And in Louisiana, cultivators for the medical market are now preparing for what will likely be a worsening hurricane season ahead. While outdoor farmers are trying to figure out the best way to navigate the ever-changing elements, many of them are resigning themselves to the fact that moving their operations inside may be best for their bottom line. But as you can read about in the most recent issue of Different Leaf magazine, indoor grow facilities are not known for being super earth-friendly. So how can cultivators, who may soon have to move indoors, make sure they're growing cannabis in an eco-friendly and sustainable way? This episode, we've got two guests from opposite coasts. First up is Pagenkopf. He's the farm manager at Diem Cannabis in Oregon, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the fires on the West Coast, what's at stake for growers, and what they're trying to do to survive. Aaron has been growing weed professionally for the past few years, and he's been watching the wildfire season get worse and worse. Aaron and I actually had to reschedule our interview because of the wildfires near their facility earlier this week. Thanks so much for joining me, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a crazy couple of weeks in Oregon with, the intense fires and changes in the weather and all that. But it's a beautiful sunny day. It's 86 out here in Oregon, and I'm harvesting plants. Couldn't ask for a better time.
You guys had some wildfires near you on Tuesday. Is that what happened?
Yes, ma'am. We had a couple different wildfires in the state pop up, primarily kind of eastern and south central Oregon. Coming out from the East Coast, never experienced wildfires before. It was a crazy time.
Where are you from on the East Coast?
Atlanta.
Oh, really? That's where my husband's from.
Right on.
So now you've been out there growing for a while. Have you seen how the fires have started to change the cannabis industry out there?
Absolutely. Wildfires out here most people out here are used to them. However, the cannabis industry still being so relatively new on the rec side, I think it took a lot of people by surprise, and a lot of people weren't prepared for them. The OLCC, our regulatory board out here, released a statement saying about 20% of the production licenses down in Southern Oregon primarily were impacted by the wildfires. I believe it was Josephine and Jackson counties, which are kind of south central Oregon, were hit the hardest. And about 62% of the production licenses are held in both of those counties. So they had the outdoor market has significantly been reduced this year because of that. There's a company down there, they're big into CBD, East Fork cultivars. The fires came within a mile of their farm, and they actually stayed and started digging fire lines and trenches to keep this away from their crop.
Wow.
And they held it off, but the fires are only the beginning of the battle, I would say, for the industry.
What do you mean by that?
When the fires came through, the weather completely changed. So the night before the fires, we had record-breaking winds. And for us out here, we had an outdoor grow. We came in the morning, about a quarter of our fence line was actually snapped at the base. We had steel poles that the winds were so strong, they actually snapped those steel poles. We lost about 5% of our crop due to wind damage. And then the weather really changed. The weather became extremely dry. The skies were overcast and black, filled with smoke, to the point it was so dark, it took away all of the light from the plants. They went about 4 or 5 days without needing any water. Our plants are 7 feet tall outside. So for them to go that long without water was scary.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm assuming that there's ash falling and there's smoke around. Does that affect the plants as well?
I believe it does. The research and science in this industry is still developing. We're learning new things every day about these plants. And one of those new things is, what does ash from a wildfire do to an outdoor crop? How does that impact the quality of the product at the end of the day? And one of the big fears was, if you mix ash with water and you let it sit for long enough, you develop lye. It's a pretty toxic chemical. You don't want to ingest it or consume it in any way. So that was a big fear of ours. And we got lucky enough that we had a rain come through and kind of wash all of our plants off to where that was no longer a concern. But all of our pistils, from the extreme wind, dry environment, and the ash landing on them, they all prematurely turned orange to where, if you went outside and you looked at them, you go, oh, the pistils have turned, they're ready to come down. But in fact, it was the plants were kind of screaming for help. They're going, man, we don't like this.
So the pistils are sort of like the glands on the plant that tell you when they're ready to be harvested. Yeah,
the pistils are actually part of the plant's sex organs. But if you're looking at a non-ripe plant, it looks hairy. It's got all these white, beautiful pistils, which we just call hairs, popping out of it. And when those begin to turn orange, that's the indication that you're moving towards ripeness.
So there's probably a lot of farms out there in Oregon who it's not just about what they've lost in the fires, but also kind of what the smoke and the ash and the surrounding air is doing to them. So this really affects money. Like, this is a huge impact on the industry. Not just fires that are impacting it. We've got snow in Colorado. All of a sudden they had like a 70-degree swing one day and they were covered in snow and they lost a bunch of harvest. There were floods down in Louisiana. And then, there's fires on the West Coast. I'm wondering what this all does to the supply chain. So this has to impact, how much supply there is and therefore the price of everything, right?
Absolutely. Typical outdoor harvest in Oregon, and I'll kind of stick to Oregon because this is what I know the best. But we've nicknamed it Croptober, and I don't know if other states use that nickname, but the outdoor harvest comes in October, affectionately named Croptober, and you can watch the price of flower on the wholesale side steadily increase through the year right up until about October 1. And then that outdoor comes in and prices drop. You get a big influx in product into the market. And a lot of people rely on that volume of product to last kind of through the rest of the year to the next Croptober. This year, 20% of the farms have been impacted. We're definitely going to see, not immediately, but we will see impacts on the availability of product. The quality of product will go down for a short time. And you might have to pay a little bit more for that lower quality product as well.
Nobody wants to hear that.
No, they don't.
No. And I mean, climate change is really about fluctuating temperatures. Whatever is happening, it's about to get really unpredictable. And it just looks like outdoor growing might not be the best way to do things. What do you think? Do we have a future with any outdoor crops, or is it all going to move indoors?
I think the market will be hard to sustain that low price point product without your outdoor grows. Growing inside, while you have far more control, it also costs more to implement and build those controls. A lot of the practices that we use on the indoor grow side, they're harsh and they're sometimes harmful to the environment as well. The great thing about outdoor growing, the sun is free. There's no electricity, there's no power. We're not using refrigerant systems to cool our rooms down, which that coolant might leak. Those units don't always get properly recycled. But you move to the outdoor, your organic methods work a little bit better outside. You're not dumping your organophosphates into the groundwater with your salt-based fertilizers. But I think we're going to see a shift where right now each state kind of comes online, and each state is unique. We have a branch of our company out in Massachusetts, in Worcester, and we're getting ready to build a grow out there. And my counterpart out there is like, man, there's no way you can grow outdoors in Mass, and it costs way more to grow indoors here because the weather outside is a lot more harsh. It gets a lot colder.
Right.
I lived in Massachusetts when I was very young, in Worcester for 2 years,
Oh, yeah.
and Kansas before that. So
You've lived all over, so that the climate is different all over America as well, and everywhere's getting hit at different rates. And Massachusetts is unlike the West Coast. Well, I lived in Southern California for a while, and it was like 70 degrees every day. It was amazing. And then there are places like Florida where it's more like a tropical climate, and then you've got Massachusetts where we have those really distinct 4 seasons. And you're right, it's just kind of not a great climate to grow outdoors anymore. And so I'm wondering, all of these farms that are up here in Maine and Vermont, whether they're going to have to eventually sort of give it up and just go indoors and just find an eco-friendly, sustainable way to do that.
I think that's 100% spot on. Greenhouses and light depth and things of that nature, they're a little bit easier to maintain, and you can kind of shift the windows in which you grow and harvest throughout the year. With the greenhouse, you can keep the temperatures more correct and in the proper ranges. Whereas outside, Mother Nature's a fickle mistress. She does what she wants to do. And, she likes, oh, you made a plan? Well, I'm going to rip that up for you.
Right.
But I think we'll see farming kind of, that's what we're really doing. We're farming medicine for some people. It's recreational for others. But at the end of the day, growing cannabis is truly farming, no matter how you look at it. And you do develop a special relationship with the plant, and there's something unique about the amount of time and love and attention that we give to each of our genetics. But just like with ag, where you don't see a lot of guys growing corn and that kind of stuff up in New England, that's all moved to areas in the world where it's more economical and feasible to grow it year round and be able to get the yields and the profit that you need to sustain your business. So as we move towards federal legalization, I think we'll see production kind of shift towards those states where it's more feasible to pull off year round.
As Aaron said, the way indoor grows are being done in legal states right now, they're not known for being great for the environment. In fact, 1 pound of cannabis grown indoors takes about 2,000 to 3,000 kilowatt hours of energy, which is enough to power a typical home in the US for around 3 months. While the normal way of growing indoors isn't great for the environment, it's not always easy to grow outdoors, especially in places like New England, and it's not looking great for the future of outdoor grows throughout the rest of the country. So what does the future of sustainable cannabis growing look like? Joining us now is Sam Milton of Climate Resources Group to tell us what growers and consumers can do to make sure that they're selling and buying weed that has been cultivated in the most eco-friendly way. I read up on the Different Leaf article that you were featured in.
Mm-hmm.
Growers, specifically indoor growers, use so much energy. 40% of their total costs are going to their energy. There's a couple of different ways in which this is impacting our world. It's impacting our grid, we could really come up against blackouts and things like that. But also it's just sort of polluting to grow indoors, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think the main pollution, when you think about it, is really from the smokestacks from the power plants. Thankfully, in New England, we have a little bit more cleaner grid than you do in other parts of the country. We use some natural gas. We don't use much oil now, which is good. We use some amount of solar and more wind. But still, each time you plug a light into the wall and turn it on, you're drawing power from those power plants. So that's kind of the main source of pollution, at least as far as most kind of policymakers are thinking about it. And really in Massachusetts, I think they're keenly aware of the carbon footprint of the power grid, which is why way back in 2017 or so, or 2018, when they were beginning to create the regulatory framework for this industry, the state government weighed in and said, hey, we're going to try to regulate the energy intensity of these facilities.
Right. So what exactly does an eco-friendly, sustainable growing operation